God is more than just one functionality, and God is many things. God has many roles, if you will, many responsibilities, and the unconscious mind is certainly an area where you contact and where God contacts you, but the unconscious mind has other things to do besides just, communicating with God. I mean, in other words, what are we going to do after lunch? No longer his responsibility. He's just a butler. He's a servant. He might have a room in the house, or he might have quarters on the property somewhere, servants' quarters. He goes in there, and then in the next day he comes in and he does whatever the master of the house tells him to do. And so Moses represents the servant. The disciples represent servants. They do whatever the master tells them to do. He says, but the son, the actual heir, who owns the house, he lives in the house at night when the servant gone to his servant quarters, or when the servant goes home, catches the bus, all right, to go back to their, to their house. They're being hired every day to come in and do whatever that the master tells them to do. So the conscious mind is really a servant. He's being given instructions by somebody who owns the house, who's responsible for the upkeep of the house, to make sure that the heart provides enough blood, make sure that the lungs obtain enough oxygen, make sure that the brain is getting the sustenance, nutrition, make sure the toenails are being sufficiently supplied with hard material so they can be tough. All right, everything that the body has to do, the mind, the unconscious mind, the master of the house is the one that handles all those contracts.
Right. Okay.
Do you remember the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air?
Yeah.
Well, the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, there was a son and a cousin. Both of those are heirs of the lawyer or judge or whoever he was that owned the house.
Right.
So that they had a butler named Jeffrey. Jeffrey was much older than them.
Right.
Just as Moses, the law, is much older than the Lamb, who represents grace. But the little boy, even though he was kind of goofy, and even the little girls who were there, the sons and daughters of the owner of the house, who was a lawyer or judge or something,
right,
they could tell Jeffrey, the butler, what to do.
Right.
And they did it on a daily basis. And the butler has to do what the son, what the heir commands them to do. Same way with the conscious mind and the subconscious mind. The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air represents a function of the unconscious mind because he is an inhabitant. He owns the property. He dwells there permanently, whereas Jeffrey, he's a hireling. He's a servant. He comes and goes. He does what he's told. And see, it's interesting because there's an overlap, because Jeffrey, the butler, has to do everything that basically the owner of the house would normally do. He says, look, I want you to clean the kitchen and fix breakfast. Would you mind? And he's like, no, sir, whatever you want. What would you like? You want a kosher ham and cheese sandwich? If it's, whatever is possible to be done within the resources that are available in the house, he'll do it. Right. But at the end of the day, he's like, boom, I'm out of here. Okay? Will Smith has a new movie out. It's called Pound of Flesh. I'm going to go see it. And it's going to cost me £7 to get in. It's going to cost me £1 to see 7 pounds of flesh. In reruns. So that's how they work together, the conscious mind. And see, at the end of the day, when the butler goes home, that's what happens with the conscious mind. At the end of the day, he goes to sleep. He's done. He had nothing further to do. His role, his functionality, for all intents and purposes, is extinguished. He no longer functions. He doesn't exist. He ceases to exist. He has to be reborn. he has to be, in other words, he has his own key. Jeffrey, the butler, has his own key. He can come in the front or side or back door, whatever they do. He has to come in the next day and start all over again and pick up where he left off. Whereas the owner and master of the house, they abide in the house forever. They abide in the house all night.
Jeffrey stayed in the house with him.
But he had to stay in his quarters. He had a place that he could go. He had a role to fulfill. So it doesn't matter if the servants' quarters are in the house. It's really better if the servants' quarters are in the house. That's why the conscious mind, his quarters are in your body, in your temple. But still, he has the function of a servant. He's not the owner. He's not the master. He's not even the overlord of the house.
Right.
All those roles, if you think about, okay, you got the lawyer or judge, whatever he was, there's his wife. Okay? And so you're dealing with, two completely different roles and functions. They're in ownership. Likewise, in the human body, the left and the right hemispheres of the brain, however you want to look at this, there's a duality there, and they have their own purview of authority, and they have their own purview of skill and ingenuity, genius, talent, and creativity. And then there's the different. There had a daughter that was older, named Hillary. She was not a lawyer. Okay, she did not work for the Rose Law Firm. All right, but
always asking for $500.
Right? Yeah, Mena, Arkansas, and all this kind of stuff. But she had a particular role, a function within the ownership of the house. She could tell Jeffrey to do things that the little girl that had no breast, the younger one, that she could tell Jeffrey to do things that other one would never have a need or have the it would never dawn on her to ask Jeffrey to do this because she's a little girl. And then you had the sons, the one heir, Prototokos, so much like his father. What was it? Carlton, yeah. The one that liked Tom Jones.
Yeah.
Okay, but again, he had authority. He had complete authority over the butler. Everybody in the house, even the cousin, okay, the fresh prince. Everybody in the heir inheritance in the sonship had authority over the butler, and he knew more about that's the strangest thing, is that the butler was more intelligent about so many things than the family or the ownership was, because the conscious mind has his own skills and abilities that he develops through practice on a daily basis. But at the end of the day, boom, you turn him off. It's like a TV set,
right.
or a lamp, a candle. You blow the candle out. It would be a wise move to leave some kind of light on, so that when you get ready to turn your robot back on, that he has some power or some ability to see what's going on. But the analogy is very true when you look at the book of Hebrews, where he says, this is chapter 2 of Hebrews, verses 11, 12, 13, and 14, that Moses was just a son. Moses was just a servant. People nowadays want to be disciples when he's offering you the opportunity to be a son, to be adopted into the family. Right. To have first the begotten, second the bloodline, and then third the new birth, and then the adoption into the family. You're in the family 4 different ways from Sunday, versus being a servant like Moses who comes and goes and just does what he's told. The child of God does have both of those. Obviously, you include both of those, because Peter tells you in 1 Peter that you are a partaker of the divine nature also, so that you have the ownership stake, if you will. You are a stakeholder, okay, in the corporate, the body, if you will. So you take part in the ownership functions as well.